Page 94, the Private Eye Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Page 94, this week coming to you live from the Cheltenham Literature Festival. My name's Andrew Hunter-Murray, and I'm here on stage at Cheltenham with Helen Lewis, Ian Hislop, and Adam McQueen. We are here once again to discuss the last mag, the next mag. We better start with the front cover of this week's magazine, Trump's Gaza Triumph. The main slogan at the bottom of it, world apologises, he's not a naughty boy, he's the Messiah. Do we all owe Donald a huge apology for all the years of jokes?
Yes, and we're going to issue it through our lawyers. It's official. I actually put in a cartoon by Griselda. He's one of our cartoonists, and she'd drawn a figure looking surprisingly like me in front of a newspaper saying Middle East peace, and the caption was, "Oh, bloody Trump," which I'm afraid summed up quite a lot of it. There was also a stopped clock. I think the speech in the Knesset was quite extraordinary.
I watched all of it too, just because at no point did you know where it was going to go next.
That's unlike Trump.
What do you think the American audience made of that?
I mean, I went to a couple of Trump rallies last year, and I don't think people listen to a word he says. I think it's like going to a kind of rock concert or something like that, right? And there would be occasional bits that you do, and he'd be like, like sort of playing Freebird. Then they'd be always doing the wall, hey! And then you'd sort of tune out and go and get some snacks in between. So I imagine it was something rather similar in the Knesset, to be honest.
His main complaint seemed to be that everyone else had spoken for too long. I mean, he literally said, yeah, good speech, but a bit long. And they'd showered him with praise for hours and hours. And then he decided the best thing to do was also shower himself with praise. Obviously, everyone's saying, isn't it good? You know, the first 2 points of the 20-point plan have been achieved, nearly. That leaves quite a lot to go and quite a lot to go wrong.
Did you see the Truth Social thing he put up after his chat with Putin? And he said, this is the great accomplishment of peace in the Middle East, something that has been dreamed of for centuries. And you think, you've got 2.5 of the 20 points. There's quite a long way to go. You might not. But it is very much his style, isn't it? That basically if he says something, that's it and it's done.
I mean, he's got two main qualities. One, he's a bully, and two, he's completely unreasonable. And those, it turns out, were an incredibly good match for this situation. So the kind of key moment really came when Israel bombed Qatar. And do you ever see that amazing clip where he just came out and for once he wasn't like camp fake angry, he was actually angry. He went, they've been fighting each other for so long, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. And it was just like it had the exact tone of your dad going, I don't care who started it.
I will stop this car, I swear.
Turn it around, we won't, this services, I'll drop you off there. And then there was this extraordinary photo that came out where, and I wish there was video of this, he's got Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, with him in the Oval Office, and he's holding like an old rotary dial phone, and he's got Benjamin Netanyahu on the phone to, I think, the Emir of Qatar, going, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't mean to bomb your country, sir. I won't do it again, sir. And that was just that was the kind of extraordinary moment, I think, that Donald Trump felt that he had been personally made a fool of by Israel.
We are saying this is an actual achievement, because I tend to take sort of whatever Trump says not as non-gospel. You know, I say, well, if he is claiming he's brought peace to the Middle East, then he definitely won't have done. But there does seem to have been a bit of knocking heads together. Provisional
achievement, right? And he's got the hostages home, the ones who are still alive, and also he has made there to be a ceasefire, which has allowed some aid to get into Gaza, which is incredibly important. So even if it doesn't hold, those are some achievements, and I think that's the credit I'm willing to give him. I'm just going to take a wild outside bet that he probably hasn't solved the Middle East forever. Just call me a cynic.
Yeah, you're a cynic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because he's on to Ukraine now. That's the weekend's job, is just to sort all of that out instead.
Yeah, he'll add that. I mean, we did put on the cover, you've got to hand it to him, and then another voice saying, what, the whole of Gaza? Which again may happen if the redevelopment into Gaza Largo actually comes off. There will be this sort of visionary Middle Eastern dream.
Well, Tony Blair's going to be running it, isn't he?
The trouble with Trump is there is no loyalty. So someone asked him, you know the moment on the plane where he appears from the toilet door, and Never quite understood why he has to do this and give an interview. Head comes round, and someone said, "Are you going to put, Tony Blair in charge?" And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people don't like him." Huh.
We could have told you that for free. Helen, I mean, you cover American matters a great deal, and you fly back and forth quite a lot. You see a lot of it. So one of the things you wrote recently, after an exciting experience at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, was that America is becoming more Saudi, just as Saudi is trying to become more American.
Well, so Saudi Arabia is going through this immensely quick process of change. It has de-Islamized, de-Wahhabized in the last 10 years under its elder millennial Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. I'd like to say that as a fellow elder millennial. Finally, we're getting to run the world, and it turns out we're quite bad at it. But basically, so I didn't have to cover my hair, I didn't have to wear an abaya. They are now having Jimmy Carr, the sign of progress. You know what they say? Jimmy Carr, harbinger of democracy. So, and it was just extraordinary that you had, and Louis C.K. as well.
Jack Whitehall?
Jack Whitehall, yeah.
Basically, they now have to suffer like we do. That's the...
You don't, at least if you go to a Jack Whitehall gig in the UK, you can drink. I think that is an important...
None of my friends were that sympathetic to me going up there. I was like, I don't think they'll get tortured. And then I said, well, I am going to a Jimmy Carr gig, so...
But this point of yours about America becoming more Saudi is a fascinating one, under Trump.
Under Trump. So my point about that is that when you go to Saudi Arabia now, it's full of almost empty malls, as if they're waiting for everybody to turn up. There's a Jamie's Italian in Riyadh, sort of just waiting for families to be disappointed by overpriced pasta. Right? If you build it, they will come.
There are other overpriced pastas are available.
Many of them. But so at the same time, all of those American brands are obviously piled in. Cristiano Ronaldo is there, Mr. Beast is over there last week, there's Riyadh Fashion Festival. Everybody's just taking a bit of that Saudi cash. But at the same time, the other thing is happening in the other direction, which is that America is getting rid of the rule of law, the idea of a kind of fair trial of your peers. And the other thing is sending random members of your family to do foreign affairs work. So there's a great line in my Atlantic colleague, Graham Wood's piece about Jared Kushner going over there, and the Saudi says to him, the idea of sending your unqualified son-in-law to do quite important business, we're OK with that over here. We don't think that's weird. So, you're having this... And if you talk to people who work with some of those Gulf monarchies particularly...
God, Prince Andrew was a trade envoy.
Right, exactly. Maybe we should...
saying.
An apology to Prince Andrew. But they will say that the people in the Gulf like dealing with the Trump White House because they don't turn up and get a lecture about human rights abuses anymore. It's just basically like, would you give us some money and in exchange you can have a Trump Tower? Right? It's pure... Foreign policy, American foreign policy has given up. Perhaps it was always a delusion, that idea of being a kind of the world's policeman or being a force for liberal democracy. And now it basically is, let's talk business. So Qatar, for example, is now a huge ally of the US and is going to be, well, not only to give Donald Trump that plane, right, but it's going to be allowed to build an airbase on American soil. So deeply entwined with Trump's business interests. He's got huge crypto interests in the Middle East. And so basically, the person we should be doing an apology to really is naked, corrupt capitalism.
I'll organise that.
Put that on the cover next time.
We've got to move on in just a couple of minutes to our next section of the show. Are there any more thoughts that we haven't expressed about Trump yet that maybe you'd like to before we do?
I look forward to the day I'll never have to have a thought about Donald Trump ever again.
Yeah.
But I fear it may be for some decades to come.
Well, Ian,
is it going to happen? Is he going to go for a third term, do you reckon, Helen? You've spent time over there.
I think he absolutely wants to. The only thing that's on our side is time. He's 79 years old. He's a lot less healthy this term. And I think people laugh when I say this, but he's a lot less coherent than he used to be.
Yeah.
But the thing that's fascinating to me is that J.D. Vance, the vice president, everyone hates him. So you're getting that classic second-term president dynamic where there's an obvious heir apparent, but also a lot of other people are thinking, I could have a go, I could have a... And I think that will be... He has to keep talking about whether or not he's going to do a third term. And there are Trump 2028 hats that they keep sending to Gavin Newsom of California, for example. He has to keep that as an idea to kind of keep the party together. Because at the moment, being a Republican is incredibly simple. You don't have to have any particular thoughts on policy. It's just, do you believe in dear leader enough? And that's the one thing you have to say as a Republican, and everything else is off the table. And, of course, as soon as that breaks down and there's some idea of a post-Trump future, there are big divisions in that party about what they should do in terms of policy. But at the moment, it's a non-policy party.
So basically, he's just holding things together with the force of his personality.
The sheer
like sort of
force.
Tito in Yugoslavia or something. It's all going to fall apart after him.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, look, we should turn from Trump and the Republicans to the UK, from Trump and, you know, a party which has no obvious heir apparent, to Labour.
I think it's very, very unfair on Andy Burnham, whose performance at the Labour conference was quite extraordinary in terms of incompetence. And if that's a bid to lead, I was impressed.
He didn't. He managed not to pose with the banana, which was David Miliband's big mistake. Do you remember that one? Yeah. It is weird with Labour how you get these heir apparents who just turn up and get talked up for about 3 weeks always as the great big thing that's going to take over, and then it just sort of fades away awfully, doesn't it?
I'm going to say something really cruel about Andy Burnham, but I had to live through a previous Labour Party conference where he turned up going, "Oh, if you don't want Keir, you can have me." But he didn't beat Jeremy Corbyn in 2015. Right? He had all of the advantages of being this, you know, the establishment, centre mainstream, sensible candidate. And guess what? He couldn't connect with people in the way that Jeremy Corbyn did. And he didn't win then. And now he's on his third go-round at having a crack at it. At some point...
He could throw his hat into the ring to lead Jeremy and Sultan and Zara Sultana's party, couldn't he? I mean, they're not doing a great job of it themselves.
The third co-leader, great.
But I suppose the question I wanted to ask all three of you is really, how did things get this bad this fast for Labour? Because the levels of unpopularity across the country are extraordinary, and it's quite a remarkable set of figures when you look at it. And the really interesting thing is something has changed. So if you look at every election since 1983 and what happened afterwards to the popularity of the relative parties, every time the governing party loses popularity, their popularity slides a few points down the scale, or, 5 or 10, and the chief opposition party rises up the scale. This is the first time since all those records, since 1983, where both Labour and the Conservatives have suffered a drop in popularity since the election. Now, that's obviously because of the rise of reform, but it is quite striking to see. And Labour's slide has been really precipitous since then. How has it got so bad so quickly for them?
Well, I think it's disappointment, whereas often someone says, there's a new Conservative leader, and you go, oh, well. But with Starmer, people thought this was going to be different, and obviously if you come in with a huge majority, there is a big burden of expectation, particularly after a long period of rule by the opposition, and they disappointed really fast.
But the really odd thing is, isn't it, that they came in saying everything's going to be rubbish. It wasn't like they were promising kind of like a golden unicorn for everyone. They basically said the country's in a really bad state, it's going to be pretty disastrous, we're going to have to really, really rescue it, you're in for a really bumpy ride, and still managed to disappoint, even after that.
And I think, a lot of people, a lot of readers were limbering up to say, ugh, typical, what, you're having a go at the Labour government, are you? What do you want, the Tories back? Which is what people usually say when there's a change of government to privatise. This time they just said, bloody Labour. And you thought, they only got in yesterday. The speed of it was incredible. But it was the suits and the glasses and the immediate freebies, which was sort of absolutely extraordinary. I mean, if you've come in on a wave of people being disillusioned and disappointed on, PPE equipment, any number of sleaze stories, then the first thing you do, literally the first thing you do, is give an enormous gift-wrapped cake to the opposition and to the Tory papers to say, you're just as bad. And even if you aren't just as bad, because the amounts were never quite the same. We haven't got the Baroness Moan figure yet, but I don't...
We certainly haven't got the money, and we're never going to.
Yeah. But I think that was amazing. And then you went... we know this. You went straight into the winter fuel. So doing exactly what the opposition did, which you criticised, and then choosing as a flagship policy something that's going to make you unpopular. These are not forgiven easily.
I mean, I've got a very simple explanation for this. So Tony Blair likes to quote Lee Kuan Yew, who's the leader of Singapore, saying basically if you've got 2% economic growth, everyone's happy. If it's under 2%, everyone's unhappy. And we have had, since the financial crisis, basically stagnant wages.
Right.
At the same time, we've had an ageing population, which means we just, to even stand still in terms of both NHS provision and pension provision, just had to find more and more money out of taxes. And so I think people just feel like things are a grind. They don't feel like things are on the upswing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a lot more complicated than that, in that Labour came in saying we're going to get economic growth going, and people don't feel that yet.
I think that's true because, I mean, when Blair came in 1997, there was a feeling, and they had more of a feeling of purpose and mission than this government have ever had. But also, there was a sort of upswing in the mood of the country, which I think was largely down to economic things, that the economy was kind of improving at that point. And I remember at that point, John Major and a lot of people from his administration saying, well, actually, it was us that did that. We kind of built it.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, but you did do that after crashing it in Black Wednesday beforehand, didn't you? I mean, you did go down to go up again.
Yeah.
But it's a real benefit from, you know, if you're the person that happens to be standing when the economy goes into an upswing, you can take the credit for it.
The sympathetic view is that there's a terrible hangover from austerity having basically hollowed out public services, so they need a huge level of investment, like upfront capital investment. There's a hangover from the so-called Boris wave of immigration, in which Boris Johnson, with his typical attention to detail, just had no idea what was going on. There's the fact that, after Brexit, the goalpost immediately then moved to the Convention on Human Rights, and that small boats have really not been solved as a problem. And the fact that if you're under 45, you're paying half of your wages out in rent. That's the situation lots of people are in. And lots of people are in that situation, not just in London and the South East, but elsewhere, of thinking, will I be able to have the kind of life that my parents had? And all of that is the kind of everything. Basically, British politics just went wrong at the financial crisis, and it's never quite dug itself out of that hole.
I hope you're all feeling cheerful about this.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because what you're saying is kind of that this is not specifically a Labour thing. It's that Labour, made some promises about reform, lowercase r, in the hope of getting elected, got elected. Things they have not been able to restart 2%, 3% economic growth a year. Is this just not going to be an easily governed country because we will keep on electing people who promise they'll change things? I suspect reform, uppercase R, don't have the answers to solve all of these deep structural problems.
Do you think not, Andy?
No. I'm sorry. I know I'm a bit edgy on this podcast, but
I like the idea that they change their mind on tax immediately. I mean, even before they've got it. Usually people wait a bit for a U-turn, but I mean, he has years to promise that he's going to have massive tax cuts, and then he said, oh, well, maybe we won't now.
Right, but are we just becoming less governable as a country because we've got deep-seated problems that there isn't an easy fix for?
But you could say we're going to try and fix them rather than say, what can I think of that everyone will really hate? The collapse in popularity is, I mean, other governments have come in and economically have not done very well, but they don't have these figures, do they?
They have made some weird decisions along the way. I mean, as you say, the winter fuel thing. I mean, that and then trying to revise PIP benefit. I mean, to come in and go, right, who can we unite the country by really going after? Old people. Everyone hates them. I tell you what, the disabled as well. We'll target them as well. That'll work.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the fact that this is going to be a deeply unpopular thing to say in any room.
Check the age of the audience quickly.
Yeah, I know, right? Fellow under 60 brethren. But I do think that actually the triple lock is unsustainable, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I think.
There we go.
And actually, I don't have any problem with means testing the winter fuel allowance either. And the other problem is that realistically, when you're talking about house building and housing costs, that is also an age-related issue. And it was the one thing that I hoped would readjust the balance under Labour. The Tories were very much, their core vote was over 65, and they wanted to protect pensioner incomes and protect the green belt and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, at least Labour will come in and they'll slightly rebalance it towards working-age people. But as you say, they ham-fisted winter fuel so badly in the middle of something else. I think they're just totally terrified of revisiting any of that.
Yes.
And the excuse is always offered, I mean, it was on that and on the inheritance tax, that somehow the comms team had failed to communicate what was actually happening. And, I shouldn't have to, accept winter fuel allowance. I mean, as a very old person, I think I should get cold.
You should burn copies of the Private Eye Annual for warmth.
Well, you never know, see how sales are. But none of that was explained, and the means testing wasn't explained, and the benefit reform was not explained. And everyone says, well, it's not the government's fault, it's their advisors, it's their PR people. And in the end, you have to stop making excuses for PR people and advisors and senior figures and all these people and just say, well, maybe the leadership is a bit useless.
Yeah.
And they need to explain policies, give people a vision, give people a narrative, give people a reason to vote for them. And those are not negligible skills.
Yeah, I mean, Starmer does have an identity. You know, he is a human rights lawyer. Like, he's a football fan. I don't know if you know what his dad did for a living, but he comes from a relatively underprivileged background. He certainly wasn't sent to Dulwich College like Nigel Farage. You know, there is a story there, but it's one that he's always been slightly resistant and reluctant to tell.
Yeah.
Did something amazingly funny happen in the subtitles? Right, all right. We'll have it. I thought it got more than it deserved.
But someone could just clip that and send it into private eye. We have a funny cuttings thing. We get a tenner, so...
But, you know, Starmer hasn't made a load of money flogging gold services like Nigel Farage. I mean, there is a story that he is able to tell, but it is seeming resistant to doing so. I do think also they are operating in an extremely hostile media environment, which you know, is new. I mean, sorry, it's not new for Starmer or for Labour, but it is, you know, it's new since the election.
Yeah.
I mean, the rearguard action fought by the Telegraph, the Mail, the Express was extraordinary.
Adam, you write about it a lot in Street of Shame, right? That there is a phalanx there that the left has never quite been able to recreate in media terms.
Well, what I'm really enjoying at the moment is the bizarre alliances that are going on, particularly, you know, this story, endless, really, really targeting Morgan McSweeney off the back of this book, The Fraud, by Paul Holden. And it's been pushed largely by the Mail and the Telegraph, but Paul Holden is about as Corbynite as they come. You know, he works with Andrew Feinstein, who was the guy that stood against Keir Starmer in Holborn and St Pancras. I mean, this really is an amazing case of your enemy's enemy is your friend. I mean, these are sort of not natural bedfellows, are they? But they're coming at it from both sides. Does anyone fully understand the Jonathan Powell and China story?
No.
Have we got anyone in from GCHQ tonight? That's good. No one put their hands up. You would have been sacked. Yeah. I'm a bit lost in the detail. But again, this seems like, I mean, of all the things, I'm not going to give advice to Kemi Badenoch, but if you're going to target Starmer on one thing, I would say that he's probably quite hot on the proper process of criminal prosecutions. Just as an ex-head of the CPS, that's probably something he kind of knows the details on.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's not very convincing on it.
He's not really convincing on anything. No. I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes,
he genuinely loves Arsenal. And if you get him to talk to you about it, he'd just be like, yeah, I really like Arsenal. It's a really great team. He just cannot convey even emotion that you know behind the scenes is genuine.
But people want to believe that, you know, Keir Starmer's absolutely straight and, you know, his experience as a lawyer means he really does understand the law and support the law. And then we end up in a situation with this prosecution where the Deputy National Security Advisor is somehow seriously to blame, but the actual National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, had no idea. Goodness knows. I mean, he's not there to supervise his deputy, for goodness sake. And you think, well, why doesn't he know? He's the National Security Advisor. Presumably, what we think of China is his business. I mean, he's not elected, and he's been appointed, but that is still his job.
But it's all built on this giant lie, isn't it? Which is the fact that actually lots of people, if you talk to people in Whitehall and the civil service, they do regard China as a huge threat. They know it's always trying to hack us. They know it's always trying to send suspiciously attractive ladies to Lib Dem party conference. I genuinely think that happened. You know, but...
OK, they're not that good. It was the Lib Dem conference.
Yeah, got to spread your net wide. But at the same time, they also know that we are immensely, our supply chains...
Did come up as...
Jeanette Wide.
Jeanette.
That is the name of one of the Chinese spies who...
Come on, guys. It's not I'm sorry, I haven't a clue.
Anyway, but that's the fundamental hypocrisy, is that everybody acknowledges that China is trying to do, not a hot war against us, but certainly hostile actions against British businesses, the British state. But at the same time, we really need them, and we'd quite like them, you know, to be on good trade terms with them. So we have to very delicately walk that tightrope. And that, to me, is, in all the back and forth, just exposing the fact that the government can't maintain a consistent position on China. Because it's like, please don't make us be mean to them. We like iPhones.
The other thing that's really struck me about that case is kind of how low rent the stuff they must have been getting was. Because it was like...
awful.
Now we're going to infiltrate Tom Tugendhat's office and see what Tommy Tuggs is really thinking about things. And one of the bits of information that we're trying to extract was
Sorry, can I just pause there? Because every time you've been trying to get the nickname Tommy Tuggs to happen.
I'm going to get it there.
And every time it's been ruthlessly cut out. But I admire your commitment.
Every fortnight. No, but one of the pieces of information they were apparently trying to pick up from these two guys was whether Jeremy Hunt was going to go all the way in the Conservative leadership contest. And you just think, just read a newspaper. I mean, there's pages and pages about this.
Yes, why not pick up a fortnightly news magazine?
It's not James Bond versus Blofeld, is it?
No.
So are we just doomed to keep on electing people, being disappointed, and then electing more disruptive actors, if I can put it that way?
Basically, you're saying, is Nigel going to win the next election, aren't you?
Sure.
Yeah.
And would he disappoint, do you think?
No.
I mean, do you think the depth of talent in the Reform Party would maybe put on a better performance? I mean, local councils, it's going well.
Yeah, I mean,
some of them haven't resigned.
But you've had to basically hive off a separate bit of the Rotten Boroughs page solely for the amazing performances that Reform councillors have been turning in.
Yes, and, a lot of people say, well, if you give them more publicity, they'll do even better. And I say, well, but am I not meant to cover the fact that when confronted by what's your policy on special needs and potholes, it's stop the boats? Which, again, you can sort of make a case, but eventually they've got to run something. And they've got to run something less badly than the previous lot. Which, again, I mean, I think that will be the test. So are you saying if people vote for reform, will we be disappointed? My guess is yes.
Now, we are at a literature festival, and Private Eye has a strong literary tradition dating all the way back to 1961. So I think it's time to hand over for one of Page 94's legendary quizzes. And Adam, you're going to be running this one, I believe.
The Grand Private Eye Literary Quiz. Yes, indeed. So, which poet laureate began a Private Eye column which is still running to this day?
I'll just have a wrong guess for a bit of sport. I'll say Robert Southey in 1819.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
Dryden. I remember him in the office. That's not true. It was John Betjeman who started the Pilotti column.
Sorry, I'm just enjoying the fact Kemi Badenoch was saying last week, English degrees, they're no use for anything. They are brilliant for showing off the things you remember 20 years later, aren't they? It was John Betjeman, the Nooks and Corners column, yes, indeed. The architecture column, which is still going.
Yes, and he handed over to the very brilliant Gavin Stamp. It's now run by Jane Mackenzie.
Yes, indeed.
And it's almost a sort of a cranny in the magazine itself. Some people think it's the best thing in the magazine. I absolutely love it. Some people say, why are you always wanging on about buildings that are falling down? And the answer is because it'd be nice if they didn't. And also that they weren't set on fire.
No, go on fire.
On
That's the
fire.
phrase.
Yes.
Strangely went on fire.
My highly insured pub has gone on fire.
Yeah, that page it's a funny mix of charming heritage and blatant arson. Yeah. It's a really odd mix.
Crooks and nooks. Like the people from the Crooked House pub, aren't they going to have to put that back to the way it was before
Which
it
is
went
very
on
funny.
fire?
Very
They
funny.
have, yes, and there's also a pub in London where they did that. They had to put it back exactly with the 1920s frontage and all the tiling and everything. One of those victories for Jane and the Nooks and Corners column. Yeah, absolutely. Right, question number 2. From 1977 to 1979, the Eye carried, very unlikely this, a gardening column written under the pseudonym of Rose Blight. But who was the real author? Helen, I'm going to throw that one in your direction.
I've got this... My brain is delivering like Julian Barnes or someone like that.
No.
No. Think
Andy?
Australian.
I think...
Clive James? Jermaine Greer.
Jermaine Greer.
It was with
Has it?
Jermaine.
Jermaine Greer, indeed, yes. 7 years after The Female Eunuch, that was what she was doing. The Revolting Garden, it was called. She was recruited by Richard Ingrams after they appeared on the news quiz together. And
God,
she
that must have been quite the...
She resigned after he wound her up by threatening to turn it into a cooking column. Didn't go down so well. She
Did he
stormed off
basically
in a
go,
huff,
make me a
is what
sandwich,
she said.
Jermaine Greer? Yes.
Pretty much that, yeah.
I see where that trolling happened.
So she wrote a gardening, gardening, what was the gardening element?
It was called The Revolting Garden. I mean, basically, it was saying, tear everything out of your garden and concrete over it, so it wasn't your traditional gardening column.
But she's retired to run a wood in Australia, so it's quite on brand.
Leave your bush
She's probably
untrimmed.
concreted over it.
Andy, that's going to be on the subtitles if you're not careful.
No, there we go. Got away without it.
Concrete over your bush, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
I think I should be employing the subtitle writer. Or is this just AI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't spell AI properly, so possibly not. Oh, it has done. See, that's learning. That's machine learning, that is. Question number 3. The Eye's resident obituarist, E.J. Thribb, went on tour in the 1970s in the person of long-serving Eye joke writer Barry Fantoni, who sadly died earlier this year. Which real poet did he share the bill with?
Larkin. I can see it now.
Lads on tour.
The Chucklesome Twosome of E.J. Thribb and Philip Larkin.
Simon Armitage?
No.
Was it his beat poets? Was it Horowitz?
It wasn't Horowitz, but you're in the right
Allen
area.
Ginsberg?
Ginsberg.
That would have been interesting.
In the
Not someone
Travel
like-
Lodge in Chippenham.
OK, we're just naming poets now. Shall I
Yeah,
tell
sorry.
you?
Yeah.
It was Roger McGough, presenter of Poetry Please and beat poet and member of the Scaffold, yes. OK, Sude's Corner. Which novelist on the Eye's 50th birthday in 2011 was crowned Britain's biggest Sude, with at that time a record 41 entries in Sude's Corner? And an entire corner also devoted to himself alone in 1996.
I was going to say Jeffrey Archer, but then pseudo-intellectual's not really his thing.
Does John Betjeman want to jump in on this one at all? Any ideas?
Jay McInerney featured a lot. Oh, Will Self, that's a good guess.
Thank you. Well done. Yes, Will Self. Indeed.
This audience is brilliant.
Fantastic. Have you ever rejected a Sude for the corner because you felt it was too profound and moving, Ian?
No.
Right. Moving on.
No, that's right. I was just thinking, I think I did reject when I was a student Will Self's cartoons.
Really?
Which he tried to get into a student magazine I was then running. And I feel somehow he's always resented that.
Yes, it's your fault he became a novelist.
If you just encouraged, he could have been just drawing cartoons for us all this time.
Yeah.
Instead he went off and became a Sude.
Yep, another one missed.
Best known for her long-running romantic series Heir of Sorrows, charting the love life of our present monarch, Dame Sylvie Crin's first work published in the Eye charted another royal romance. Whose and which was it called? What was it called?
It was called Love in the Saddle.
Very good.
And it was about Princess Anne.
Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips. Very
Yes.
good indeed, yeah.
Again, this was Barry Fantoni who came up with this stuff. They did these accounts of the royal family as though they were bad romantic novels, which is a very good approach. And for years it was Dame Sylvie Crin, and now it's Dame Head of Shoulders, who's taken on the responsibility of covering. She now does the King of Troubles. And they're stories about Prince Charles, about Queen Camilla, about his aide-de-camp, Sir Alan Fitztightly, who is the last of the Fitztightleys, as it happens, who develops this rich home life. His friend, the Vice Admiral, and he, big ABBA fans, try and direct the monarch into ways of seeing the world that are less gloomy. And it features, obviously, Prince Harry and Meghan and William and the others. And it's a way of unseriously doing the royal family, which I absolutely love. I mean, writing Sylvie Crin is incredibly easy because it's just, I'm sure you could all do it. Don't let on. Because royal correspondents are so serious. They interpret pictures and small details and tiny bits of gossip and take it very, very earnestly. And it's a pleasure to think it's probably not what this is about. Yeah, the first one was Princess Anne. What was the one after that?
Oh, there were all sorts. Andre Previn, Anna Ford, Esther Ranson. I mean, we mustn't forget Never Too Old either, the Rupert Murdoch story.
Yes.
Very, very long running, as is he.
Yes. it is just funny, the idea of him going on and on. And his latest wife is a sort of life scientist and biologist who's looking for eternal life. I'm not quite sure that's what her research says, but I think that's what it's all about. And because Succession, which I'm sure you watched, was so strongly linked, to keep the lawyers happy, to Rupert's own life, we decided it would be funny if Rupert had no idea that it wasn't his own life. So when he lists his children, it's Lachlan, it's Liz, it's
Kendall,
Shiv, and Tom. So again, it's a way of not taking seriously things that the papers take very, very seriously. And the Murdoch trial, in which he tried to essentially disown half of his, well, not half of his children, most of his children, bar one, because they weren't right-wing enough to take over the company, you'd find difficult that to make up. And then that failed, so he's paid everyone off. And yet he's still there.
And as I keep saying, his mum lived to 106, so he's got a good decade and a couple of wives left in him yet, I think.
But I did have a sort of Trump moment of when he decided to take on Trump, you suddenly thought, well, God, isn't Murdoch great?
This is what I mean about your enemy's enemy being your friend, isn't it? Unlikely alliances.
Will you miss him?
Well, he'll outlive me.
One final literary question. Ian, we've talked about Dame Sylvia Crinn, we've talked about Thrib. Is there any sort of book in which perhaps some sort of yearly collection, possibly available in all good bookshops and in a signing tent directly after this event, in which people could read some examples of this magnificent literature?
Oh, you've got me there. Oh, yes, I think I do know what it is. It's the Private Eye Annual.
Hey!
Which is a selection of all the best jokes of the year. It won't surprise you that Keir Starmer is on the cover. Charming look-alike with the figure of sadness. And it's, roundup of the year's jokes. Everything's in there, and it's all written by Private AI, which is a new technology that we've developed that involves human beings meeting together in rooms and writing. It probably won't catch on, and it may be a bit late. It has been a pretty crazy year trying to keep up with the news cycle, partly because Trump draws the atmosphere out of all news and makes it about himself, but partly because there's just been so much going on elsewhere. And so it's got photo bubbles, it's got Thrib pieces, it's got my favourite joke on the cover. Meghan launches a Netflix cookery show, lovely picture, voice off saying, "What are you making?" And she's saying, "Money."
And it's even got the joke by Andy that a man was arrested for holding at a demonstration. So mind how you go with your copies.
Yeah.
Yes, got any more, Andy, that can get our audience in jail for the evening?
I'm not trying to get anyone arrested. Well, actually, I suppose I am, but not readers. We should come to the questions from the audience, because we've had loads in. So let's start with one from Jasper. Noting the demographic of the audience here tonight, are you confident that you're growing your younger audience to ensure the magazine's long-term future?
There's one there. I can see them.
It's all down to you, sir. Yeah.
Well, as I always say, I quote the example of in communist Russia, Stalin going in to a church which was full of old people, and he said, "Ha, what will you do when the old people die?" And the priest said, "There will be more old people." And when people want to come to what the eye has to offer, they're very welcome.
And also the readership are younger than you would expect, I think.
Andy, that's just that you're getting older.
Oh, no, don't. Right.
They used to seem really old when you first joined, didn't they?
Right. Let's have a younger, sprightlier question. This one comes from Clive Field, 76 years. Have you considered increasing the font size of your publication? Thank you, Clive. I think we have done already, haven't we?
The answer to this is we've done the font size twice. We've increased it. We've also, I hope you've noticed, run a series of ads for magnifying glasses, reading lights, Specsavers. So the answer is we do try and make it readable, but I think there is partly people find, as all the surveys show, just reading more difficult. But I don't think, on the whole, our readers do. And if we say, look, there's a whole page of type here, you might have to read it, I don't think they're going to be scared. And certainly not at the Cheltenham Literary Festival. Yeah. I do hope, the attention span will be more than 800 words.
Well, can we come on then to, I really like this question, no name from this question. How does Private Eye remain relevant in a post-truth world where many get news from TikTok and similar non-news outlets? Is that something you consider, something you worry about?
What, TikTok?
Yeah.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time on it.
There is a weird function that the Eye has kind of taken on that has become a slight correction centre. I mean, certainly the Street of Shame pages are just for pointing out what bollocks that story was in the Telegraph last week and that one in the Mail and what the story really is behind that. So there's an attempt to become kind of a reliable source of news at the end of it, isn't there?
And I think that is in itself a service. It's just we run an awful lot about social media and about how Twitter works and about how AI works. And, I mean, I loved the story in the last issue of the video that Jenrick had made, sort of wandering around, supposedly in Handsworth, where he wasn't, saying, I can't see a white face. And you look at the video and they're behind him. There's 3 people over there.
There's a lot of that, isn't there, about saying you have to do video, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to be on social media. And actually, I think about 10 years ago, people kind of said, I can't believe the Eye is not going full bore onto this internet thing we've always heard so much about.
A lot of people are saying that to attract young people, you have to start doing podcasts and things, aren't they? I mean, can you imagine?
Dreadful.
Gross. But I think that actually, weirdly, the internet is now it's like Thames Water have taken it over, basically, right?
Yeah.
It's just full of shit.
Superb.
No, but it's true. Whereas, if you open up Private Eye, then that has been written by actual journalists and checked and subbed by other actual journalists. And, most of it you could probably be fairly assured is actually not just some hallucination of some AI bot. And that's what I think is slightly, in a way, I always sort of think we're heading for this kind of post-apocalyptic future where people can't pass around copies of sort of underground magazines to each other because it'll be the only kind of place where you can actually find things that are interesting and true.
Sub-edited, yeah.
Sub-edited, yeah.
We were discussing in the office last week when we were putting the pages together, weren't we? And we're saying, how could be kind of like Ape being more like a newspaper website now? We thought big Post-it notes, kind of like all over the pages, with really sticky glue on that you really have to kind of pull off to actually get at anything you want to see. That'd be pretty
give
much
us your money.
The Mirror website experience.
Yeah, you turn the page, and every so often the page just goes blank and reloads.
Yeah.
That would be a good experience we should bring to the magazine.
My magazine's crashed.
Right, we're entering injury time, so I'm going to try and whip through a few more. If, and it is a big if, as a panel you were elected as the next government, what do you mean big if?
Yes.
What would be your first act to improve our country?
Resign.
Great. Right, on we go. How can we express support for Palestine without being called anti-Semitic? Actually, someone did get recently arrested for they had a T-shirt that said "Plasticine Action," and it was about.
Was it Morph? Was it a little Morph?
It was a pro-Morph thing. Yeah. They were briefly detained, and then the police officer came over and said, "I'm incredibly embarrassed, and you're free to go."
Yes, I mean, I think being slightly careful about the wording. If you're an Oxford student at the beginning of your life, probably not a good idea to be filmed chanting about putting people in the ground.
Put the in the ground, yeah. I think that's
when they're trying to get people out of the ground. I mean, just a certain amount of care.
Yeah. What intractable problem would you advise Farage to address in order to win his Nobel Peace Prize when he inevitably becomes our glorious leader?
The crypto.
Yeah. Well, we know he's got a direct line to Russia, so maybe he'll be able to sort something out over there.
Start him small on one of those kind of Leylandii disputes you get in the Daily Mail. Work up to something bigger.
Brilliant. This is... How do you choose your contributors, and do you get MI5 to vet them?
Yes, I've heard that.
We've all had the tap on the shoulder.
We don't on the whole. Though, I mean, I have had some experience with the security Forces. I don't know if you remember, any of you, when the plans for Desert Storm were stolen. They were left in a Volvo by a civil servant outside the showroom. And then I had the Admiral, who was in charge of the D-Notice committee, rang me up. I mean, this is security at a very high level. And he said to me, "Is that Ian Hislop?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You know these plans for Desert Storm?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You haven't got them, old boy, have you?"
Right, we're going to stop there. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being here. We hope you've enjoyed the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the Page 94 team from Private Eye. Woo!